Hi guys, and welcome back to A Millennial Mind. Today I'm so excited to welcome my new guest. She's a fashion blogger, works in finance and an activist. So without further ado, I'm really excited to welcome Jigna Patel. So hi Jigna, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, thanks. How are
Yeah,
you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so
I
excited.
know, me too. We've been planning this for ages, done had so many phone calls. So I'm very excited to actually finally speak to you today. So, for people who don't know who you are, can you just give a little bit of an introduction as to what you do and, yeah, who you are?
Yeah, definitely. So I work in finance full time, but my passion is in fashion. So I do a lot of styling videos on my Instagram.
Mhm.
I like to provide outfit inspiration. And more recently, I've started discussing some of the more taboo subjects in the South Asian community, like divorce and mental health, therapy, and things like that. And I just create videos to try and spread awareness and also try and educate people on some of these topics.
Your videos recently on divorce were amazing, and you reached so many people with that. And that's actually how I found you. And that's what I want to discuss with you today is the Indian expectation around divorce. But I think before we kind of go into divorce, I think it's important to discuss marriage. Now, I have a whole podcast about marriage, so I'm not going to go into the details. You'll hear me ranting on that one then. But, there is a massive expectation that women should be married. And there's also simultaneously an expectation that women should never be divorced. And, marriage is seen as a goal. It's talked about to so many kids, boys and girls, since they're born. It's very much within our Indian culture that we're forced, not necessarily forced, but it's very much within our Indian culture that we encourage everyone to get married at a younger age, to find somebody. And I think that comes from, just the fact that our parents see that as stability. They want us to be, okay. And, in the olden ages, it was that the woman provided for the man in terms of the household duties, cooked for him, cleaned for him, and the man was the breadwinner. And so, I do think those kind of principles are still existent today, but I guess it is changing. But from your perspective, what were the expectations around marriage for you?
So I actually got married now, I think it was about almost 9 years ago. And I think a lot of things have changed since then. So back then, there was definitely an
Mhm.
expectation on me to finish university, get a job, and then get married. That was the immediate step. So at the time, I was around 21 or 22 when the conversation started. And like you say, my whole life, there's been this expectation around getting married at a young age. And as soon as I finished
Yeah.
university, my parents were like, okay, you need to get married now, and it was almost like a given. It wasn't necessarily something that I actually wanted to do. I did used to say to my parents, surely I'm a bit young, because at the time
Yeah.
I was only 23 when I got married. But it was
Oh my
also
God.
something that everybody did. And it was almost like you have to do it. This is what everyone does. And if you're not married by, say, 25, then people start to assume there's something wrong with you.
I can echo that because literally every single person I meet, I'm 27 now, every single person I meet is like, why aren't you getting married? What's wrong with you? Why don't you want to meet somebody? Are you against marriage? Don't you want to find someone? I'm like, I do. I'm not against marriage. I'm just against finding somebody who is on paper right for me, but in person not. I'm against finding someone just for the sake of it. I don't want to just be with anyone. But you are definitely labeled as somebody who's then difficult or not accommodating or whatever that people like to say. So you say that you were almost, it was almost something that everybody did. How did you meet your ex-husband?
So it was actually an introduction arranged type situation. So there were about three boys that were presented to me, and it was almost like, okay, here's three guys, pick one. So I, knew a few facts about them, where they live, what they do, and I essentially picked one guy based on that. And then it was
Yeah.
the whole, let's chat, let's get to know each other. But I actually didn't know him for very long before we had to let our families know whether we wanted to marry each other. I'd say
How long? How long was not long?
not long. It was like a month, which really is not long. Yeah. So I think
Oh my God.
I know. So we'd only met up a handful of times, and our families were like, okay, what's your answer? And at that point, I mean, of course you get on with someone. So I've only seen him a few times.
Of course.
And I said to them, yep, that's fine. Like, we get on. I think it should be okay. But also at the time, I was 22. I myself had no idea what marriage entailed. I was so naive. And I just thought, okay, well, we get on. Surely it's fine. And I just didn't know that there was so much more that you needed in a relationship to succeed in a marriage.
No, for sure. And I think matching somebody based on, the criteria that our parents have for us, or, that people have for us, is very much like their age, where they live, what they do. And sometimes those things are great and you're compatible, and sometimes you're not. And what's interesting now is we have dating apps, which are kind of the same version, but less pressure for sure. You don't have that kind of mutual family friend or mutual person involved and that obligation to be with that person. But it seems that people are now finding it harder to stay in relationships given the choice that they have. We have so many access to so many different options, but with the divorce rate is higher than ever. So do you think that there are some benefits of actually having an arranged marriage?
I think it's difficult for me to see the benefits just because I think my process didn't go so well. But saying that, my sister went through the same process and she's happily married, and she has but she's happily married and she has children, and it worked out great for her. And I think there are some people it does work
Yeah,
well with, and I think at the end of the day it just depends on the actual person. It's like dating apps. There are a lot of people that
I
I
agree.
know that have met their future husbands on dating apps and they're really happy and living that blissful life. Whereas I can't do dating apps.
Yeah.
I'm really terrible at them. And I don't know if I just have this difficulty with being set up with someone in any situation. But I think there are definitely positives, and there are benefits to an arranged marriage. And I think it is possible to meet the right person. But I just think my experience just wasn't the best.
So let's talk a little bit about your experience now. So you were kind of pushed into marrying someone at a younger age. And I guess that person was compatible with you on paper, or what was expected of you. What what made you then realize that it wasn't working in that relationship?
So I'd say I knew about a few months into knowing him that we were not well suited. And it was almost like the more time that I spent with him, I realized that we actually don't get on and we're actually
Mm,
really different people. But by this point, everyone knew that we were getting married. The whole community knew, people around the world, relatives in America and India. Everyone knew we were getting married. And I just didn't have it in me to back out. I just did not have the courage to say to my parents, okay, I don't want to do this. I don't feel like it's right. So I almost went
why
through,
didn't you have the courage to do that? What was stopping you saying, no, I don't want to do this?
honestly, I was so scared of what people would say. And when I think back now, I'm like that it's ridiculous that I was so scared at the time, but because now I just don't care what people say. But back then, I lived by what people would say, and as did my family. And a lot of it was less so what people would say about me and more so what people would say about my family. And that's what I didn't want. I didn't want to be the person that ruined my parents' reputation, and that's what was scaring me, and that's why I couldn't turn around and do it, because I just thought it's better that I'm in this marriage rather than ruining my parents' reputation. I just did not understand the ramifications of an unhappy marriage at the time. I always just thought I'm strong enough, no matter how bad things get, it's still better than backing out now.
And I think that's just so heartbreaking, because I think it's so relevant to today's society, where we're constantly in a world of social media, where we're posting on social media, oh, I'm going to get engaged. And when you realize, okay, it's not the case, so many people continue with that because they're afraid of what other people are going to say. The focus within an Indian community has always been from a young age, focus on your reputation, what people think of you, what people are going to say about you. And I think in the Western world today, it's really apparent for absolutely everyone, because we share everything and everybody knows about everything. So many people that I know have stayed in unhappy marriages because they're afraid of what other people are going to say. And so often it can be prevented in the beginning. And it's really amazing for the people who go through that and are strong enough to leave. But it's also really difficult because there's such a big stigma attached to it. And I think that is changing now, but there still is a stigma attached to people who break off their engagements or break off their marriage, when there's absolutely no need for there to be. Because ultimately, I don't think anybody gets engaged thinking they're going to break up. I don't think anybody gets married thinking they're going to break up. I think they want it to be something that's going to be lasting forever. And to break up with somebody takes significant strength. I mean, we've talked about this so much. It's so hard to actually do that and go through it and deal with the consequences after, from, dealing with everyone's opinions and everyone has something to say, and actually leaving that person that you've married. That the stigma just enhances the insecurity and anxiety that somebody feels. And for me, I just think there's so many negatives for us not addressing the stigma, which is why, I think it's so important we're having this discussion today. But what was the biggest thing that you found? What's the biggest disadvantage you see from still having a stigma around getting a divorce or breaking off an engagement?
I think the biggest disadvantage is that there are so many people out there who are staying in unhappy marriages because of what people will say. And there's unhappy marriages, but there's also marriages where people are being treated really badly, or there's
Yeah.
some sort of physical abuse, domestic abuse involved. And there's situations that people really should not be in, but they're so scared to leave them. So people are actually staying in dangerous situations as well, simply because of the fear of what people will say, because of what society will say, and because of how unfairly they'll be judged. And so many people are scared to hear those things, because it is difficult to hear those things, especially when you're in a bad situation and you're already feeling so terrible about yourself. It's really hard to put yourself in a situation where you're going to have to listen to a lot of things, and a lot of people don't have the strength to do that. And that's so for them it's easier to just avoid it altogether.
And how did you find the strength to do that?
I think for me, I was so depressed at the time. I think I was 4 years into my marriage, and things had just got worse and worse and worse. And even though before I got married, I always thought I've got the strength to deal with this, because I like to think of
Mm.
myself as quite a mentally strong person. And I never ever believed I would just become this broken woman that I had about 4 years into my marriage. And I was severely depressed, and I just thought there was no escape from my marriage. In my head, I still didn't have the strength to get a divorce. And I thought, okay, I'm trapped in this life forever
Yeah.
now. And I got to the point where I was so sad that I just wanted to end my own life. And when it got to that point, it's almost like it hit me that surely
Mm.
this isn't the only way out. Surely now I have to go and get a divorce if I want to live. And that was basically what pushed me to do it. And even
And
then, it was so difficult.
And that's so scary to think that because of this stigma, because of of the fear of what people are going to say or how you're going to be judged, it almost lets some people get to that stage of their life where they're feeling this deep depression. And, like you said, the consequences of that are huge. You're thinking about ending your life. For some people, they may get to that and it's too late because they're so worried about the image that they're going to give off by getting a divorce. And I think it's something we really need to understand, that nobody intends to get a divorce, and therefore you cannot be blamed or looked down upon or looked at, and you talk about this in your videos, that people were labeling you all these negative things. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure, yeah. So I had a lot of horrible things said about me. I think at the time when I got divorced, divorce still wasn't spoken about very much. It's almost 5 years ago now that I got
Yeah.
divorced. And back then, people were still very much staying in unhappy marriages, or people were getting divorced and nobody was talking about it. And I was in no way prepared for the things that people were going to say to me. I just was really naive to the whole situation. And people were constantly calling me things like a second timer, and they were calling me damaged. And they were saying that no one's going to want to marry me now because I've been married before. All of these horrible things. You get told that you'll have to marry leftover people, or you get told that you can now only be with someone who's divorced as well, because apparently now, like, you can't marry someone who's not been divorced. And there are so many horrible things that are said about you. People speculate on why your marriage has ended. People make up all sorts of rumors about you, and the list, it goes on. People are just really, really negative about the whole situation.
No, definitely. And I think I see that a lot, when people have been in long-term relationships with somebody and they've broken up, they don't have that same stigma attached to them. But it's essentially the same with the marriage, except that, you've just put a certificate, like you've signed a certificate. That's how I look at it though, anyway. But it's so much better to be with somebody who's been in a committed, loving relationship, or, it's so much better to be with somebody who's been committed to a relationship compared to somebody who hasn't. And yet we don't attach any stigma to the other side. So it's a bit confusing sometimes, because surely what you want from somebody is commitment, and yet we stigmatize against people who have just shown commitment. So I definitely think that's something that we need to reevaluate and think every time we judge somebody for being divorced. And I think the biggest thing for me is there's such negative effects from the stigma What
I
are
think
some of
at
your
the
experience
time I
yourself?
was already so low in confidence, and it made me even more anxious about meeting people,
Mm,
because before I met someone, I would always have in my head all of the things that people have told me. I was already scared to tell people that I'm divorced, because everyone around me, the community, people that I'd spoken to, everyone had told me that being divorced was such a bad thing and no one's going to accept me. So before I've even given someone a chance, I'm already expecting them to not accept me. I'm already expecting them to have an issue with me being divorced. I'm already getting ready to justify why I got divorced or why I'm not a bad
yeah.
person. And it causes so much anxiety in someone. It causes so much self
Mm.
doubt. And it really does chip away at your
No,
confidence.
definitely. I can imagine. So, how did you start to overcome that and start to think, okay, no, I'm not going to allow other people's opinions to affect me. I'm going to block out anyone who's negative around me and just start to really focus on me?
It was actually so difficult, because when I first told people that I was getting divorced, there was a lot of negativity from my community,
Imagine.
and my family also found it really difficult to accept. So it was really hard for me at the time, knowing that something that I had done had upset so many
Yeah.
people. But at the time, I was also going to therapy, and my therapist helped me so much in terms of building up my confidence and getting past all of these things that people would say. And it's quite funny. I always used to say to my therapist, "Oh, people are talking about me and people are saying this," and he would always say, "Who are these people? Who are these people you're speaking about?"
Yeah.
And when you think about it like that, it really did make me realize, actually, who are these people? These people are not supporting me through my divorce. These people are not paying my bills. These people are not asking me if I'm okay. So why am I allowing these people's opinions to affect me? So it was at that point I really realized that the only person's opinion I need to focus on right now is myself. I'm going through a tough time and I need to do whatever I can to get through that. And that really involved blocking out negativity, not listening to people, and just trying to
Mm.
constantly remember that what I'm doing is the best thing for me. And I just almost had to keep going over that same saying over and over again.
Completely agree. And I think that's the best way to be. But the thing I find is that there's a significant difference between our generation, our parents' generation, and our grandparents' generation. And for them, they see divorce as kind of giving up and not working through things. And I think a stereotype that's massively attached to millennials, especially, is that we're lazy. We don't work hard enough. We don't work hard in relationships. We don't work hard in school. We don't work hard in companies. And we want everything quickly. We want instant gratification. So when you're in a relationship that you're not getting the love or the care or whatever it is, people are like, you're not persevering. And it's really difficult for us because we're in this constant battle of listening to Cardi B and Beyonce, who are like, do whatever you want, be your own person, know who you are. And then our parents, who were like, push through, push through, push through. How did you know when it was the right time to leave? And how did you manage to balance those two ideologies in your head? Because I'm sure you had them from like your parents and then obviously from
Yeah,
your
I
generation
went back
too.
and forth with this divorce decision for years. Even after we got married, I knew straight away. I knew before we even got married that he wasn't the right person for me, but I still went ahead and did it. But after we'd actually got married, there were so many times where I thought, no, this is it. This is it. I want a divorce. And I just kept going back and forth, because every time there'd be parents or there'd be someone saying, no, it's fine. You can work through it. You haven't been married long. And then it becomes timelines where, oh, you've only been married for a year. Give it more time. Give it more time. And it almost got to the point where, even though I'd been married for 4 years, I was still going back and forth on the decision, and my family was still saying, no, you just need to talk it through. At that point, I was so
Yeah.
exhausted. I was fed up. I knew that things weren't going to get better. Things had just got worse over the years. And I think it was at the point where I knew in my heart that I had tried everything. I had tried so hard to make this work, and knowing that nothing had changed in those 4 years, that I knew in myself that I was 100% comfortable now with getting a divorce.
Yeah. And I think people are so different. Some people are able to stay in a marriage that isn't conventionally what people would expect from a marriage, where there's a lot of love and care and you spend a lot of time together and you truly love each other because they're not bothered about that. They just care about what people are thinking from the outside and what they look like to other people. I mean, social media has really made us all try and be happier on social media than we are in real life. So as long as you're portraying that you're happy and in a marriage, then it's okay. It does not matter to some people at all if they're living separately from their partner. They never see them. They see them like once every 3 months. It doesn't matter at all for some people. But I think it matters to a lot of people to have a relationship in which you feel truly loved and you want to truly love that person. And for them, it's really difficult to actually make that decision to walk away because it feels like you're abandoning somebody, right? And you talked about this, you know, you felt so much guilt from actually leaving that person. How did you manage to move on from that?
Honestly, I had that guilt for ages, and no one tells you that you're going to feel guilty. No one had told me, and
Yeah.
I carried that guilt for years. I mean, even now, sometimes I still feel guilty about it, which is weird
Yeah.
because I know it was the best thing for both me and my ex-husband, and I know that we're both happier now, knowing that we are divorced and we've moved on with our lives. But you still carry so much guilt, and I think again, like I said earlier, you just have to keep reminding yourself that getting a divorce was better than staying in an unhappy marriage for both of us. And so that's almost what helps me get past it. But I just have to keep telling myself that this was the best thing for us, both of us, not just for me, even though I'm the one that initiated it, it was definitely the best thing for him as well.
The way you're saying it was the best thing for you and for him is more that you love yourself more than putting yourself through that, right? So the self-love journey, I think people experience at different moments in their life. When did you start to experience, when did you start to realize how important it was to love
It was
yourself?
after I filed for divorce and I was going through my therapy because I think I'd spent so much of my life not loving myself. I think I've always been really self critical. I've had such low self confidence. I've been in bad relationships. And I think all of those things have just compounded and they've really lowered my self
Yeah,
confidence. And for so many years, I think that's why I put up with being treated incorrectly in relationships and I put up with being unhappy in my marriage because I thought I didn't deserve any better. And it was also going to therapy
yeah,
and really understanding why I felt the way that I did and really understanding where my anxiety was coming from and how my self confidence was driving all of my relationship decisions. And I think that was the beginning of my journey. And my therapist really helped me build my confidence. He really helped me recognize things that I need to love within myself, which I found really awkward at the time because I am so self critical. But he really helped me on that journey. And now it's something that I always work on daily because there are still days where I'll feel rubbish about myself or I'll have low self confidence. But I really try to put into play the things that my therapist has told me and, you know, making really good like things about myself just to remind me that actually, you know, my self confidence should be
yeah.
higher and there are things about myself that I should be happy about.
I love that. I think therapy is the best thing in the world. You know, people, there's also a stigma around therapy. And, you know, people always find it weird when I share that I've gone to therapy. There are some people who are like, wow, tell me more, amazing. And there's others who I can just see from their face that they're so uncomfortable that I've shared it. But I think it really helps you to really understand who you are and also just helps you grow in so many ways that you can't even comprehend. And, you know, I think the most important thing is when you've made a decision, often you doubt yourself because it's in your control. And that's happened to me so much in my life. Whenever I've made the decision, it's always made me think twice, like, why did I make that? What did I do? Because I'm quite self critical as well. And I just overthink so much that I'll think, did I do the right thing? And often I think the main thing to remember is like your gut never lies. And so making that decision in the moment was something that you have to do. Looking back on it is something that you can question several times. But with a divorce, I think it's really difficult because you probably have so many people telling you to not do it just because of the societal pressure that we face within an Indian community. How did you start to really navigate through that? Because obviously therapy was helping you, but did you tell people you were going through therapy or did you just get on with it?
One of my friends who told me how to even get therapy because at the time I knew that I was anxious and I knew that I was depressed, but I really did not understand anything about how to get therapy. I didn't know even how to get a therapist. So he sent me loads of
Mm.
details and I called up the therapist. So he
Yeah.
knew that I was getting therapy and a few of my close friends did. I told my immediate family, but again it was really difficult telling them because I think for them they also find it hard to understand mental health issues and depression. And so for them they were just like, why can't you talk to us or why can't you talk to your friends? It's difficult for them to understand why I'm going to third party to go and speak about my feelings.
A complete stranger who doesn't know you. But often I think that's the beauty in it, isn't it? That you just can say whatever you want without any judgment, with nobody knowing anything about your life. But I had a similar situation when I went to therapy because I was so stuck in something at the time and I just felt so lost and didn't I'd overexhausted everyone with my stories and what I wanted to do. And I literally just Googled therapist in Nottingham. And I went that day. And that is a true story. I literally went that evening. And it was amazing. It changed my life. I love therapy. I think it's so powerful. But like I said, with those aunties and people who are shocked by it, how did you overcome that?
it was really difficult initially because I remember my first public community outing, and it was a wedding, and I knew that so many people were going to be there. My ex-husband's family were going to be there, and it was the first time I was going to see everyone after filing for divorce, and I was so nervous. I was honestly so shaky and nervous, but it was almost like I had to just take a deep breath and just remind myself that no, you are happy, this is the best thing. Because even when the aunties came up to me, and they would all come up to me and say, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, honestly, they would all speak to me as though my life was over. I just smiled in their face, and I just kept telling them, don't be sorry, I'm doing really well, I'm happy, I'm in a great place, this is the happiest I've been in years. And it's almost like
Yeah.
you can't sit and accept when someone talks to you like that. You have to tell them, no, I'm fine, please do not feel sorry for me, please do not pity me, I'm in a great place. But again, it has to come from you, and it has to come from your own self-belief that you genuinely are in a better place.
Don't you feel you're constantly justifying to people, oh, I'm happy, I'm much better off, it didn't work out between us? How do you even cope with that? Because I would get so frustrated having to justify to absolutely everyone how I was feeling.
Exactly. I think, honestly, I still have to do it now. Even if I meet random people and they find out I'm divorced, or I tell them I'm divorced, their immediate reaction is, oh, I'm so sorry, what happened? And then, I have to go through the whole thing over again, and it is exhausting. And honestly, this is one of the reasons why I made my Instagram video, because I was going through a phase where I was really fed up of having to justify to people about my divorce. And I was really fed up with
Mm.
having to keep telling people that it was a positive thing and that my life was actually better afterwards. And I was at the point where I thought, surely I'm not the only person now that is feeling this way. There's got to be other people that feel this way. And that's actually what
So many.
to make this video.
Yeah. And there were so many. And I mean, it's great. Anytime someone asks you about a divorce, just be like, just look at my video.
Yeah,
And
I should just send them
conversation to you
the
again. It's composed. I've got it all written down. You can replay it however many times you want. But, no, in all seriousness, that video was unbelievable. And I think you reached so many people. I think you told me, I can't remember how many thousands of messages you said that you got from it. But I think it's amazing you spoke out about it, and the way you articulated yourself and shared, things to do, how you looked after yourself. You even did like several Q&As after that, which I loved, because some people are so afraid to even ask a question to other influencers because they don't even want to claim, like, they don't even want to tell them that they're divorced or that they want a divorce, because there is such a taboo around it that we almost just stick and stay in one relationship because we've already said that we're going to. And how I look at it is that you just have one life. And if you're with the wrong person, that's it. Your life is done. Well, that's a bit negative, but like, you just have one life. And, that one life is for you to be happy, for you to feel comforted, for you to feel love. And when you're in a relationship and it sucks out all that energy out of you and you feel miserable, then what's the point, really? I can't understand how people stay in such unhappy marriages just for the sake of it. And I really hope that this video and all the rest of your videos really encourage people to know that you can be happy after. It's not the end of the world. All these negative things that people say around divorce are completely made up and false. So, for me, that's the thing I would say around divorce. But from your perspective, what's the one thing you wish you could change around the Indian expectation on divorce?
I wish I could just remove all of the judgment. Actually, I wish I could remove all of the negative judgment that comes about divorce, because I really wish there was more of a dialogue about it, so that people could go and speak about divorce to their parents and they could actually discuss these situations, and so that they don't feel pressured into staying in an unhappy marriage. And I really wish people could understand the positive aspects of a divorce. And that is one thing I really like to talk about on my page all the time, is all the positive things that come from divorce. People just focus on the negative and they think there's no positive aspects involved. And honestly, that is the one thing I would change. I just want everyone to start looking at it as the beginning of a new life rather than your life ending.
So I don't think we covered that. What are some of the positive aspects of divorce?
I think you're able to focus on yourself. For me personally, I was able to work on my self-confidence, which is a huge thing that I've basically been neglecting for most of my life. And it's honestly changed me as a person. I've done things like traveling solo around the world. I've put myself in situations that I would have normally felt really uncomfortable with, but they've all helped me work on me as a person. And even just little things that you think you can't do, or little travel things that you can't do, or put to the back when you're married because you think, oh, I can't do this, or I have to think about somebody else. And it's almost just being able to focus on yourself is actually so freeing.
Yeah, it sounds very free, just being able to do whatever you want and feeling, I think you radiate so much happiness. So, it's not necessarily you saying, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy. Like, I can hear it, I can see it. And I'm sure everyone listening or watching this can also see that. And, I'm really glad that you have taken the step to talk about this. It's so brave of you. And, I really love talking to you today. I think there's so many things that I've learned from you and that everyone else is going to be learning, whether they're listening or watching to this. And I really appreciate you coming on, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so great to thank you.
Well, it's lovely talking to you, and hopefully see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.